is 516. I'm very excited for my next guest because he is the fearless leader of Sports Radio 94 WIP and Trust the Process. This guy has a big following, and he's going to have an opinion or two on the Sixers move today that got Noel traded for basically nothing, and that is Spike Eskin, who's kind enough to hop on board the Zach Gelb show right now. So, Spike, real quickly before we get into this mess today with Noel and then also Joel Okafor that's happening with the Sixers and Brian Colangelo, I need to get your radio executive responsibilities from us and an opinion. KHTK in Sacramento is the Kings radio home. They told the host not to show up the next day, and this is Damian Barling, because he called Lottie Divac a moron, embarrassing, and awful. Please tell me how ridiculous this is.
You know what? They're a CBS radio station, and it's probably better that I don't comment one way or the other. I heard Angela talking about it today. Not really. I guess what I would say is that we are, much like in many cases, we're not privy to the entire story, so I don't know if there's more background with that talent, if they had a specific conversation about it. So I don't know.
All right, I won't put you in a tough
spot.
What
do you want me to do?
Yeah, I don't need to put you in a tough spot, but I'm just saying you wouldn't have a radio station if you suspended hosts for calling people morons, embarrassing, and awful because you went through the Chip Kelly era.
Well, yeah, but here's what I'll say. Not pertaining to this specific situation at all. What we try to keep away from is like personal insults. So when I heard that, I guess what I'll say is, when I heard what the guy said specifically, the first thing that went through my head is, you could have said what he did was moronic without calling him a moron. And having that, the relationship with a team like that is a delicate balance. But again, I'm not privy to any of the conversations the program director had with the talent, so I don't really know. So
I'll save you on this one. We'll move on.
Thank you.
Today, when you heard the news that Noel was traded, and then you finally saw what they got back after finding out the limitations on the picks, what was your reaction, Spike?
It sort of seems unbelievable, right? When I heard it, because really what they traded him for, it's funny, the PR thing is that it's a first-round pick. It's not a first-round pick because there's no way it'll convey this year. So they traded him for 2 second-round picks and a guard that can't shoot. Now, maybe Justin Anderson will be something someday, but he's not anything right now. So essentially, they traded him for the same thing they traded for Ish Smith last year, for a half season of Ish Smith, and the same thing they got for Ersan Ilyasova. And if you're telling me that Noel, a 22-year-old defensive prodigy center that was the 6th pick in the draft, and has been pretty, maybe not dominant, but pretty impressive over the few years that he's been here, if all he's worth is 2 second-round picks, I can't figure that out. And it doesn't really add up to say that you're worried that somebody else is going to sign him for a lot of money, because if somebody else is going to sign him for a lot of money, then there should have been more of a market to trade him. So it's confusing. I was waiting for the other shoe to drop, but there's no other shoe.
It's absolutely embarrassing. And I know Colangelo's an easy target, but especially these last few weeks, he's done just a brutal job, and everyone's going to call him out for the lying because of the lack of transparency with the Embiid injury, and supposedly Embiid is now upset from his comments today, but it wasn't that long ago where he said, hey, we're not going to give away a player for nothing, and we're going to get something or someone back of equal value. I just don't see the equal value in this one, so when Brian talks tomorrow at 10:30 a.m., it's going to be a rough day for him, Spike.
Yeah, and when Hinkie would make trades like this, but they would be for Spencer Hawes or Evan Turner or players that we didn't see much value in. There was a lot of criticism that he was making trades for second-round picks. When you're trading guys like Noel for second-round picks, I think that's a completely different story. And especially when, I fully believe that he was the one leaking out the stories about all the Jahlil Okafor offers, and especially when you don't trade Okafor. And I don't mind that they didn't trade Okafor, but the fact that they did trade Noel for sort of such a sort of an embarrassing package, and they didn't trade Okafor is just it's really hard to figure out.
And we knew they were desperate because they had 3 big men, and they had to make a trade with someone. And today, if he just would have traded Okafor, I don't think the backlash is as strong because, most of the fan base had the preference of Noel over Okafor. And a lot of fans, they'll give the argument that you gave a few moments ago, well, why not just pay Noel at the end of the year, or at worst case, since you gave him away for nothing, just let him walk. To me, the way I look at this and translate it is that Colangelo didn't want to give Noel the money. Why do you think that was? Because you know the Sixers have a lot of money to spend.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me in that if you are, first of all, none of us are really sure about, you're not sure about anything ever, but I can say that we're pretty confident that we're not sure at all about Joel Embiid's health. So having Noel as a backup to Embiid, but also a backup plan in case that guy doesn't stay healthy, a really 2017 center, which is what Nerlens Noel is, runs the floor, passes very well, protects the rim, and plays great defense. If Joel Embiid never gets healthy, you're fine with Nerlens Noel as your starting center. So to pay him for a couple of years, and by the way, Embiid's never going to be more than a 32-minute-a-game guy, never. So you're always going to be able to find 24 minutes for Nerlens Noel if you can play them at the same time for 8 minutes a game or something like that. So I just don't understand why paying him was such a big deal when you have that much cap space, because I really think it's a contract that in 2 years, if you needed to move it, when you have to pay everybody else, then you can move it. I don't know. I don't have any answers as to.
No, you're exactly right. And just with Okafor, though, is there any chance that his career gets saved in Philadelphia? Because right now the confidence is at an all-time low.
I don't know what he is. Like, I think the way that you put Okafor is that for Jahlil Okafor to be successful, the entire team has to be centered around how he plays, and I just don't think he's good enough for you to do that. I think you're building a loser if you do that. And even the offense is worse when Jahlil Okafor's on the court. The thing that he is supposed to be good at, the thing that he is supposed to excel at, the team is worse at when he's playing. So I just don't know what his value is. Like, I think really they keep him around and use him as a sweetener at draft time if they need to make a trade. But I don't see how he ends up being of any value to the team.
And the shocking part of this is, Colangelo, we were talking about last draft about this trade, and this is what you walk away with. I know the Sixers long-term, you still probably feel confident about them because you have Embiid, you have Simmons, you have Sarge, and all those picks with the Lakers and the Kings that are coming up in the next few years. But after today, a lot of Sixer fans probably scratching their heads and wondering about Brian Colangelo. Where is your confidence in Colangelo?
Look, his resume is fine. Most general managers are neither terrible nor excellent. Most of them are fine, and he seems like a bright guy and has at least a pretty decent resume. I think the situation that he walked into is almost foolproof in that they have so many guys, young guys, talented guys, and so many picks that even if you screw up a bunch of times, it seems hard to believe that you're not going to have a good young team. But based on what he's done since he's been here, the best thing you can say is that up until this point is that he didn't do anything wrong. He picked Ben Simmons. It seems like Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot is going to be a player. Like, he made the right picks. He didn't screw anything up. But I think But in retrospect, not trading Noel or Okafor before the season was a real miscalculation. And it's hard to believe that. You can't look at it and say that it wasn't. So my confidence, I don't know. It's not high. Now, he could be bad at it, and they could still figure it out, right? The Cavs took Anthony Bennett number 1 overall. They took Dion Waiters number 3 or number 4 overall, and they wound up with a contender. The Timberwolves have been mismanaged for years and somehow wound up with Andrew Wiggins, Karl Anthony Towns, and Zach LaVine. So you can even be bad at it and end up fine, but my confidence in him isn't real high right now.
Have you ever met Josh Harris? Just wondering.
If I ever met him, I've been in the same room, but I don't think I've ever said hello to him. No.
All right, let's just say, because you're a big shot at WIP, he happens to get your number. And let's say you're out one night and Josh Harris is out one night as well, and he's been drinking a little bit, Josh Harris, and he calls up Spike and he says, "Hey, Spike, what's one thing you'd give up to get Sam Hinkie back?" What would be that one thing you'd give up to get Hinkie back?
Anything at all? Like,
come on, give me something that you think you'd never give up that you would give up.
Can I tell you? I'd give up. I'd give up my pinky, my left pinky. I'd give up.
A pinky for Hinkie.
Yeah, I'd give up. I don't want to do anything that's going to upset my wife, though I don't think she's listening. I'll tell you what, my podcast, which I love dearly, and I've been doing for 3.5 years, I would give up the podcast to have Sam Hinkie back. I would stop doing the Rights to Ricky Sanchez. That would be it. I would quit. I would quit that. I would donate my season tickets to someone less fortunate for an entire year.
Would you give up your job to get Hinkie back?
No. I said nothing that would upset the wife, and the job pays the mortgage. So, I can always follow Sam to wherever he goes, but that doesn't pay the rent.
Spike, before we let you run, you have so many draft picks here in Philadelphia. In the offseason, would you possibly give some of those draft picks away if you get a player like a Paul George, Jimmy Butler? Because I'd be someone that would be a big proponent of that.
Absolutely. The reason that you collect all those things is to acquire a superstar. And if you can use those things, whether that's in the draft, in the trade, or free agency isn't really an option right now. The draft is the draft. But if you can, what you have to ask yourself is the guy that I'm taking, what is the likelihood that guy is better than Paul George? Or better than Jimmy Butler. And that likelihood's not very high. It's possible, but it's not very high. And those guys are both young enough to where you're still getting, 6 or 7 years of their prime left, which is more than enough, So I would definitely consider that.
And finally, just with the situation you have now, Ilyasova no longer here. Dario's minutes will increase. You'll see more of Rashawn Holmes with Nerlens Noel out. More minutes for Dario. What do you think the player you'll see, especially with him already playing longer than he's ever played before? And then how about Rashawn Holmes?
Yeah, I think the Dario thing is great. It's a shame that Embiid isn't playing. I guess they've ruled him out of the next 4 games. So it's a shame that but Dario's natural position, he has to play that 4. He has to play with a center. So I think, but he can't play with Okafor really. I mean, he can, but I don't think that's an optimal lineup. So I like seeing Dario at the 4. I like Rashawn Holmes, but not as much as everybody else. Blocking shots is only one part of defense, and people compared him to Nerlens a lot, but he's not. I would say he's not nearly half the defender that Nerlens is. He doesn't really have the on-court awareness and doesn't play the same sort of team defense. So, and he's older than Noel, which is crazy to think that he's older than Noel. I like Rashawn Holmes, and I think he can get better. But if all of that stuff is at the expense of losing Nerlens Noel, it's troubling.
One more. Would you trade Howard Eskin to Italy somewhere in order to get Hinkie back?
Well, he's not dying, right? He's just going somewhere else?
No, just going to Italy. I'm not going to ask you to kill your father.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, he asked me to go homeless. So, I would send him to another country. As long as he's going to live well in that country, which you and I both know my father, he's going to live well wherever he goes, then yeah, I think it's fine.
Fur coats and all. But really, I see your father all the time. And I was someone that I was not a believer in Sam Hinkie. And then really this year I started to embrace Sam Hinkie. And I'm able to admit that I was wrong on the process. But there's a lot of people that were so anti-process and they weren't able to admit that they were wrong. Will your father ever admit that he's wrong in the process?
No. He's not interested. I've tried to tell everyone here, he's not interested in real conversation about it. He's just interested in making you crazy. So here's the thing.
It's like Bayless.
Yeah, exactly. So as the more it becomes clear to people like you and I that what Sam did was right, the more he gets joy out of saying that it was wrong. And I just watch people fall into the trap every day. That trap, by the way, put me through college. It put a roof over my head, and it continues to work. So, no, he will never admit that.
Spike, great stuff. We appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Take it easy, man.
There's Spike Eskin, the fearless leader of Sports Radio 94 WIP, and trust the process. That's someone that he will genuflect any time that Sam Hinkie would walk into a room. They did this incredible draft party last year, and the chants were echoing through Xfinity Live of, "Thank you, Hinkie, dun, 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 thank you, Hinkie." This guy has a cult-like following with the Sam Hinkie stuff. And the fact that he said he'd be willing to give up his podcast, ship his father to Italy, and cut off a pinky for Hinkie. Some very interesting stuff. But the overall tone is that a lot of Sixer fans are not happy today. And I don't blame them. They're exactly right. And I don't think Brian Colangelo is this bad of a GM that everyone makes him out to be. But today, there's no defending Brian Colangelo. There's just not. Because he gave away Nerlens Noel for absolutely nothing. They could create this first-round pick, top 18 protected all they want. It's not going to happen. It's 2 second-round picks. You got nothing back for a player that could be a legitimate rim protector and a viable asset to your team, and has showed you that in Philadelphia so far. All he had to do was just get rid of Okafor today, and everyone's happy. If he got rid of Okafor, no one could fault him for getting nothing back for Okafor because there was no market for him. But the fact that he thought it was a good idea to get rid of Noel instead of Okafor and get nothing back is flat out embarrassing. It's brutal. It shows so much incompetence, especially when he is on the record saying he's only going to make a trade that you get someone back or something back that is of equal value, of some importance. What is the value? What is the importance today? They got nothing back for Nerlens Noel, and it's a big mistake. It's not going to set your franchise back. It's not going to ruin the franchise and put the process down the drain. The Sixers are still in a good spot. They still have Embiid. They still have Simmons. They still have Sarge. They still have these picks coming up. But the move today just screams an incompetent move by the general manager. And tomorrow, he is going to get it. Absolutely going to get it from the media. And he better have some good answers. If he comes with Vlade Divac answers, I'm going to be calling him a moron tomorrow. And I don't want to get Spike in any trouble there because he does work for CBS. I'm just waiting the text from Chris Olivero, just saying who helps run CBS. It's not going to be intercom and all that stuff that's going on in the radio world. But seriously, man, how does a radio host call someone a moron, call someone embarrassing? The next thing you know, you're off the air. Seriously, if that happened in Philadelphia with Chip Kelly when he was going on, or even with some of the older coaches, like a Rich Kotite, or if you want to go to the Phillies with Ruben Amaro Jr., man, everyone was calling those guys morons because they were morons in their position. They were embarrassing. They were awful.